Okay, first thing we're going to do is we're going to disconnect the outer tie rod end from it. So we did crack this nut loose right here. This nut is actually to hold the tie rod, the outer tie rod, to the rack and pinion, or the inner tie rod. So we just break this loose right here. We're going to take out this cotter pin here, remove that nut right there, and then we're going to remove the tie rod end from the vehicle. Now there's tools you can use to push this out. It connects up on here and you could pop it out, but I'm going to actually do it a different way. I'll show you how I do it. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to come up underneath the truck itself. It'll be a little tough to film this. We're going to disconnect up in the top right here. Now this is all wet because I sprayed it down with penetrating oil just to try to get it out because it's pretty rusty. So we're going to take that bolt out right up in there, and we're also going to remove another one down inside here. I have to rotate it so you can see it. We're going to take out these two lines right here. We're going to remove them, and then we're going to take out that bolt there, that bolt there, and that bolt there, and then we should be able to get the rack and pinion out. Should be. So all right, let's get started and see how it goes. Okay, now to take the cotter pin out, sometimes it seems like a very simple thing to take the cotter pin out, but when they're rusted, it's a little more difficult. So we're just going to bend it down, and then we'll just try to okay, then we'll take this nut off right here. Okay, now there's different ways you can get this out. You can come in here with a hammer and bang on the side right here and just keep banging, and it'll pop right down. You have to make sure you don't miss and hit the backing plate. Okay, we bang it right there. Okay, now when we take this tie rod end off, we're going to count how many times we take it off because we're going to put it back on the same amount of times. So we're going to count it off. All right, we'll put that off to the side for now. And we're just going to write a number down so we don't forget it. Okay, now we'll go underneath the bottom and we'll continue down there. Okay, so now looking at it from down below, what we're going to do is we're going to come up here and we're going to disconnect that 12 millimeter right up there. We're going to take that 12 millimeter out there, and we're going to disconnect that 12 millimeter right there. And we're going to take that coupling out in between the steering shaft and the rack and pinion. Now, I do have the key in the on position up there, and the battery is disconnected, and the key is in the on position. All right, so we're going to take out that bolt and that bolt. We're going to come in here with a very small chisel, and we're going to put it into that little crack right on the side there, and we're going to expand it just a little bit just to get this off of the rack and pinion. We're going to take out these two lines right here. I think they're 18 millimeter, but we'll see how that goes. We're going to disconnect this bolt here, which comes right through on the other side over here. So we're going to shoot it out from here with the air gun and hold it here. We're going to take out that bolt there and that bolt there, and theoretically it should fall right out. So let's see how it goes. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take out those two 12 millimeter bolts right there. Now this is all wet because last night I sprayed this up with penetrating oil before I left. Now, this is loose. Now we have the bolts out. I'm just going to split this up a little bit here, and we're going to take this piece off. But the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go up and we're going to put the key in the off position now, so that the shaft doesn't rotate once we have it disconnected. Now we got the shaft disconnected from the top up here. It will not go up any farther. So we're going to disconnect the steering rack here, and we're going to remove that. But first we're going to take out those bolts right there. Okay, you want to be careful when you take these lines out. If the line is twisting, just work it back and forth until it starts to free up. You want to make sure you have a bucket to catch the fluid that's going to come out. All right, now we'll disconnect the other line here as well. Again, we're just going to work it back and forth to get it to come out. Take that out and we'll let it drain a little bit. And now we're going to take out that bolt right there. So now we have this side disconnected. We're going to take out that bolt right there. And that, just so you know, is 19 millimeter up there. We are going to lube that up before we put it back in. All right, now we're going to come over on the other side here. Right on this side here, we're going to take out these two. But first, we're going to take out up on top, the lines are held on with a 12mm bolt that holds the lines to the rack. So we're going to disconnect that first. So now, as you can see, our lines are now disconnected from the rack and pinion, and we're going to take out those two bolts right there. We are going to use the air gun, just so you know. Okay, and now our rack and pinion should be pretty much disconnected. We're going to just tie these up out of the way. Okay, now we're just going to pull that coupling off and we should have it out. Alright, well that's the rack and pinion on the ground, and as it turns out, let me show you what happened, why this thing failed. The reason that it failed is, you see this, I'm going to try to do this, hang on. You see this bushing right here? This bushing actually was ripped or destroyed, and what happened is it rusted right underneath the rack and pinion here, rotted right through, and that's where the leak is coming from. Alright, so we have our new rack and pinion already. We just have to wait to get our bushing now. So, alright, let's get the new rack, match it up, and we'll put it back together. Okay, now as you notice, they're going to give you a set of O-rings. Make sure you use your no O-rings. They have to go on the line, but we'll put these off to the side for now. Of course, read this here. It's critical information, meaning if you tighten up these too tight in here, you're going to strip the rack and pinion out, so make sure you read it. What we're going to do now is we're going to center the rack itself, so it's halfway to the left side, halfway to the right side, in the middle, so that way when we put the steering shaft back on up here, it'll line up fairly straight. Alright, now before we do that, we're going to take off these nuts on this end here, and we're going to screw them back on over there. So alright, let's get set up. And that bushing right there, we actually have that coming from the parts store now, so that may hold us up a little bit, but we'll come right back when we have it in hand. Okay, while we're waiting for that bushing, we're going to put the rack up here, and we'll get it pretty much laid in where it belongs. We're going to reattach our steering shaft up to here, but we have to leave this loose on this side so we can put our bushing back on there. So we'll get the rack back together here. Okay, so now that's held in there like that. Get our steering shaft in on this side. Alright, we'll get a wait for that bushing and then we'll come back and put it back together. Alright, so we have this bolt here caught. We're going to put this bolt through as well. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to tighten anything up until we get it all, until we get everything put back here. But we're going to catch everything just loosely for now so I can put the lines back in, put the tie rods on, leave the rack loose so I can slide that bushing on. And all right, next thing we're going to do now is we're going to get the lines back into the location where they belong. We're going to take the O-rings off and we're going to replace them with the new ones. Okay, now we're going to catch the lines. Remember, you screw it in by hand. You do not want to cross-thread these lines because you'll be changing lines. Okay, now we're not going to tighten that up all the way. We're going to get our second line caught down at the bottom here. And then once you have it caught, then you can snug it up. We're not tightening them tight though. Okay, we're just caught loosely now, and now we're going to put that other bolt in the in this side of the rack that actually holds the lines in place. We're going to do that before we tighten anything else up. Remember, that was a that bolt up in there was a 12 millimeter, so that's what we're going to put back in there, that 12 millimeter. All right, now once we have that line caught, now we can tighten these up all the way. Make sure you read that. You don't want to over tighten these and strip them out. Remember, the only thing that's keeping this from leaking is it doesn't have to be tight. That O-ring is what's going to actually, I mean, it doesn't have to be gorilla tight. The O-ring is what keeps it from leaking. Okay, so now our lines are connected. Our lines are tightened up over here. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to screw our tie rod ends back on, and then we'll get those tie rod ends back onto the wheel itself. We're going to actually come up top. You know what? Let me show you real quick. Right up here, you see where that coupling is right there? That coupling is actually rusted pretty tightly on there. I'm going to go up top and I'm going to tap that down so I can get it to line up down over here on the rack and pinion, and then we'll put those two bolts in through there. So let me get these tie rod ends on and we'll continue. Okay, now remember, we took this off, it was 16 revolutions, so that's the way we're going to do it, 16 turns on. Okay, that's 16. And now we're going to bring this around, put it through there, just like that. Take our nut, put the nut back on. Now we're going to line up that cotter pin so we can put the cotter pin through. Okay, then we're going to tighten up this nut right here. Now this is going to get the wheel alignment done on it, just so you know, but for now we're just going to snug this up. And then we'll come back to that once we do the alignment. All right, we're going to go to the other side now. We're going to do the same procedure on the other side, and then we'll come right back. Okay. Now what I did is up on top right here, I just got on the steering coupling right there and just tapped it down with this pry bar and tapped it down until the bolts down there lined up, and you can see one bolt there and the other one down on the bottom. So we're going to lift it up now, and we're going to tighten them up. Okay, so now our steering shaft is actually tightened up. Tie rod ends are on. Okay, now we got our new bushing. We're going to put it back on, and we'll put this whole thing together and finish it off. These are a split bushing, as you know. last, we're going to tighten up that bolt right up on top right there. That's at 19 millimeters, remember? Okay. Alright, so let's go over everything we did down here. And then we'll go up top and finish it off. Okay. We put our coupling back together. We tightened up those two 12 millimeter bolts. We tightened up the rack here, here, and these two right here. We are going to come back underneath here and torque these down with a torque wrench. We tightened up the the lines back up here with that 12 millimeter bolt. We tightened up both of the feed line and the return line. We tightened them up, put the new O-rings on. We installed the tie rod end, put it back on with the cotter pin through the castle nut, and we tightened up this lock nut here. And we did the exact same thing on the other side there. And that's it. We're ready to lower this down now and put some power steering fluid in. Okay, now that we're all set, we're going to reconnect our cable. Okay. Next thing we're going to do is let's put some power steering fluid in. We're going to fill it up to the maximum. Put our cover back on. Okay, so alright, it's going to make a little bit of noise. That's the fluid going through. So let's start it up and make sure we have no leaks. Okay, we're just going to fill the fluid up. Let's just check it out and make sure we have no leaks. That's pretty much it. I'm going to let this run for a little bit to get all that air out of there. I'm not going to bore you with how to purge the air out of it. You basically just turn the wheel back and forth and just keep running it back and forth to get the air out. And that's it. You'll be all set. Put the wheels on, road test it, get that alignment reset, very important. And that's it. You're all done. All right, as always, thanks for watching. See you on the next one.